It is important, Honorable, as I close on this conversation of the MIs. Remember, this journey may include the AG issuing a certificate of debt. We are not there yet because we are all aware that this is a legal process. We've got to give it time and afford that accounting officer an opportunity to implement. When we're not satisfied, we elevate our powers to recommendation, to remedial action. So we are not yet at the certificate of debt stage. But just to highlight to the committee the challenges that we then come across as we navigate these powers, as we implement these powers. From the auditor's perspective, the issue of completion of investigations in some cases is taking so long. So investigations take so long to be completed. And then secondly, the disciplinary processes also for responsible officers also take so very long. So we are picking up those issues as we are implementing. Another area that is of concern is the instability in the accounting officers. So we are picking up where you would have issued those issues as we are implementing to one accounting officer, and then their term ends, and then we are back to the drawing board to issue it to the accounting officer that is replacing the one that has exited. So we are coming across those kinds of delays. There are also external delays where we would affect the completion of the investigations by the SIUs, and so we are seeing delays, and we sympathize because they are juggling so many balls, so many investigations that they are juggling with, and we are including onto their list. So we do sympathize with the IPC. We are also seeing instances where there's delays around recoveries by the state attorneys, and the most certainly, so we do sympathize with the IPC. We are also debated by the time by the state, either the hawks or the SIUs get involved. Suppliers are no longer in existence. So those are the issues that I thought let's bring them to your attention, just to indicate that as we are implementing, and we believe we are effective, but there are challenges that those are the issues that come across as we implement. There's just a journey map there. It's not that important, but it just gives you the steps towards a certificate of debt. That it's not something that you issue a notification and then there's just a journey following month you issue a certificate. There is a journey that you need to go through, and that journey requires us giving the accounting officer an opportunity to implement all the actions that issue a certificate and notify all the recommendations that all the remedial actions that the AG elevated to. So that is the journey on the MIs. All the remedial you can move the AG to the next one. So that is the journey. Okay. So I think I did, as I was speaking about the successes, I did talk about these actions that we are picking up on the ground, where we would have notified that the billings are taking place. So I think I did, as I was speaking about the successes, improvement in the control environment, the billing is taking place, and the revenue management is better than we would have identified before. I did talk about the suppliers that were also disclosing improvement and issued the material irregularities, and cases where we are seeing fraud and criminal investigations being instituted, and disciplinary processes are also being concluded. And then you would have picked up honorable input in the previous investigations with GR instituted and just resist most recent that there were cases where we issued MIs for disclaimers in the previous investigation. to municipalities. So I think it's one of the areas that they are actually very proud of. And we had issued other MIs in the past where auditees were not submitting AFS consistently, mainly in the Northwest area and the Free State, and we are beginning to see that behavior change as we are engaging with auditees when not submitting AFS consistently. All right, if you can move, and we are beginning to see. I think this is going to be almost last slide, Chairperson. We thought let's bring this area to your attention, where we are picking up that there is infrastructure grants, mainly to these departments, the human settlement, the schools backlog projects, the education infrastructure projects, and the health and facility projects. As you can pick up from the slide, in most of the cases, the budget would be utilized in full. There are cases where the auditors are under budget, and there are cases where they are on budget, right? However, what we wanted to highlight now, in line with what you raised when you were introducing this meeting, where services don't reach the citizens on the ground, and you had said it's Women's Month, and these are the women that then bear the brunt of the services that don't reach them, or the children in the schools that bear the brunt of the services that reach them, or in the hospitals, right? But what we are picking up in the main around the implementation of projects is that there's project management issues in the environment, which are causing delays in the completion of the projects. And we are seeing that the project costs, actually they escalate to levels that exceed the budgets for those projects, in some cases leading to financial losses. We are also picking in cases where they do deliver, but quality would be deficient. So there's quality defects that we are picking up. In some cases, we are picking up that houses would be completed or commissioned, but they're not utilized because there are services that the municipality should have implemented, like your water services, that was not implemented. So in terms of these project deficiencies, if you drill a bit deeper now into what are these issues that we are talking about around project management deficiencies, we're talking about where there is inability to actually do the needs assessments, like project planning, just those simple disciplines. And sometimes they don't monitor, projects, evaluate and monitor milestones if they are being met by the contractors or by the implementing agents. And in cases where there's underperformance by contractors, there are no consequences in those cases. And we are also picking up cases where contractors are also not paid in time, right? And the impact is glaring. I don't think I need to even emphasize this again. Who bears the brunt and what is the kind of impact that we see? The continued shortage of housing, the quality of the schools, the infrastructure in the schools, the access to health facilities by the citizens continues to be affected. The citizens continue to bear the brunt of these poor management capacities. The quality of the infrastructure, the useful lives of these houses that would be built would even be shorter. And in some cases, exposing the public to harm. We're picking up that money, of course, is wasted. That money could have been spent in other infrastructure priorities, right? So that takes me, Honorable Chair, to another slide, which is important. If you can move to this slide, Mokobai. Remember in the beginning when I was introducing this conversation, I talked about us being in this accountability ecosystem together. And it was important that we map out who is in this ecosystem. And at the center of this ecosystem is the citizen, of course. And we have identified every role player in the system together with what is it that they need to do to ensure that they also support, if it is parliament and provincial legislature, if it is SCOA what role can you play to ensure that the services reach the citizens? What role can you play in shifting the culture? As I had said earlier on, the AG has introduced a strategy where by 2030, they want to have shifted the culture. And in that strategy, we have identified auditees and we have categorized them into various categories. Auditees that are doing harm, auditees that are doing nothing, auditees that need to be shifted to doing good. So we have identified and categorized all those auditees, and we have a target to shift bulk of them by 2030 to a category where they start to doing good, from doing harm to doing good. And we do recognize that we will not achieve that strategy alone. We are not alone in this ecosystem. We will do our best to offer you with the insights. We will do our best to influence where we can. We will do our best to accelerate enforcement of our powers, the powers that I talked about just now. But each and everyone in this model has got a role to play. And there's a saying that actually you are as strong as your weakest link. Meaning if there is a weakest link in this model, we need to pull up that weakest link so that they begin to implement their mandates, to properly adhere to the roles and responsibilities that their mandate dictates them to do. And when we are all strong in this model, the citizen on the ground will experience the services and the promises that are located in the Constitution. So this is the context of this accountability ecosystem. It needs to balance. I think that is the message. It has to be balanced. Everyone has got to perform their roles and responsibilities so that the citizen can benefit at the end of the day. Be it the internal audit functions, be it the audit committees, the accounting officers, everyone has got to pull up and implement their roles. We all have to be successful in this. We can do as much as we can as the Office of the Auditor-General, but if there is an element that is weak in this ecosystem, the citizen will be the one that bears the brunt. So that is the context, Chairperson, of this accountability eco-model. It just recognizes that we need culture shift partners. We cannot be alone in this journey of shifting the culture by 2030. We all need one another in this journey. Our success is your success, and at the end of the day, it is the success towards the delivery of services to the citizens. Right. So the last slide, Chairperson, as I close, I'm mindful of time now. It's more a call to action from our perspective, Chair. What is it that we are recommending? One, let me start by appreciating this engagement. It's highly appreciated. For us, it demonstrates what I talked about, which is located in our vision. It demonstrates that this committee wants to enable oversight, and we need to ensure that we strengthen democracy together by ensuring that we afford you with the audit report so that we can enable oversight. And what we are recommending in our call to action, Chairperson, as I close, we need to go back to the drawing board and turn the tide here of consequence management. We need to go back to ensure that we implement these consequences as per the legislation, especially the fruitless and wasteful is very clear on what needs to be done, number one. We need that discipline to comply with the legislation and avoid leakages. We need a new culture where we comply, a culture of compliance with legislation and a culture of avoidance of leakages. And we want to recommend that this committee continues to hold all relevant role players in the accountability ecosystem to account, as I had shown the ecosystem in the earlier slide. So we want to recommend that you continue to hold them to account on how they're utilizing these funds. We also are recommending that the committee must use the insights that we share with them so that you can enhance your work, so that you can enhance the bills and policy statements. So in the main, Chairperson, that is the message that we wanted to share with you today around what you had asked us to come and provide. Thank you so very much. Back to you, Chair.
Ms. Ngoma and the team, thank you very much for the presentation. A few comments from my side. One, let me just assure you that as a standing committee on appropriations, we really appreciate your role in the accountability ecosystem. And we also wanted to play our role, and we can only play our role effectively and efficiently if we share information. So today's engagement with your good selves is meant just for that, so that we have got information, we know, so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And we, because people who are having devious intentions, they usually exploit the fact that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So from our side, as the committee and Parliament in general, we really would like to be a strong partner in this accountability ecosystem, as you put it. Again, one thing that we realize, which is not of your making, is that in most cases, auditors their intervention is post facto. The things have happened, but I'm sure being post facto this year should come first in the following year, because the things that you raise this year should be addressed in the following year. So it's very important that there should be follow-ups on the matters and issues that you raise in the different auditees. It is a worrying factor that, as we are saying, that the graph of wasteful and fruitless expenditure, you can't say what is the trend, because it means it's neither fish nor fowl. It means you can't say whether I'm improving or not improving, which is not good, because from our side we would like to see an improvement. You don't want to see the ups and downs. Again, it's more about accounting authorities and their institutions to make sure that happens. For you is to come in and say, have you done this, and so on, but the primary responsibility lies with the executive officers and accounting authorities and so on and so forth. So we take that. So with those few words, just want to say that we really appreciate the presentation, and say we are a willing partner in this ecosystem. Honorable members, you know how we do it. Can I get indications of the honorable members who would like to have a bite on what has been presented by Team AGSA?
Chair, it's Honorable Sarupin.
Honorable Sarupin, please. Honorable Sarupin, yes, this is number one. Any other honorable member?
Sheikh Imam, Chairperson.
Honorable Sheikh Imam. I know I owe you a call, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
I was going to report that to the Auditor-General, Chairperson.
Please don't. She may issue an MI SAP, so just hold on that. I'll give you a shout. Honorable Kaiso.
Kwankwa, Chair.
Honorable Kwankwa. Honorable members, any other member? Okay. Let's start with 5 minutes and see how far we go. Honorable Sarupen, please go.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me just reiterate the comments that you have made about the key role that the AG plays. I share that entirely, and I want to thank the AG for all of their good work. Chair, with regards to the causes of wasteful and fruitless expenditure as identified by the AG, and I'm going to just hone in on a couple of them. Firstly, weak project management, which results in standing down costs. I'm sure weak project management has other consequences. In the AG's longitudinal view, since they've been looking at this for years now, is project management capacity in government actually improving or getting worse over time? And I'd like to get their take on that. With regards to unoccupied property, similar, is property and facilities management getting better and worse over time? And then just with regards to negligence, are they seeing an improvement? Then, Chair, with regards to the recommendations that the AG does make to accounting officers, and then when they fail, if they get given directives, how frequently do they find that their recommendations are not followed through on? And even where they are followed through, do they find that there is compliance? Or if there isn't compliance, what sort of remedial actions do they find they have to take? Where there is compliance, what is the quality of compliance with the remedial actions? Is the remedial actions taken just to placate the AG, or is it actually done in a meaningful way? And then with regards to material irregularities brought to the attention of accounting officers, what have they found are the biggest weaknesses that cause these material irregularities that accounting officers don't actually follow up on? Now, they've got the list on the slides. I think it's slide 8. But these are obviously things that accounting officers either fix or don't fix. What are the ones that accounting officers tend to not get on top of? And what have they found is a good incentive to get accounting officers to actually get on top of these issues? I think let me leave it at that, Chair. I'm sure the rest of the committee will have lots of questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Sarupen. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I am on the road, so I just stopped on the side just to pose some questions. But thank you very much. I see when you started this morning, Chair, I'm not sure whether your spouse might have given you a directive, because you were praising women. It was all about women when you started this morning, Chairperson. On a more serious note, Chairperson, one of my questions to the AG, first of all, allow me to thank you for the fantastic work you are doing. Despite there being some amendment to the Act giving you more powers, could you tell us whether this is sufficient, or you believe that you need to be empowered a lot more to be able to deal particularly with this non-compliance? Secondly, I must agree with you. There is a massive problem, Chairperson, when it comes to the issue of escalation. We are finding more and more, and particularly, in terms of construction sites and building of housing and other things, where the moment they get onto the site, the prices increase. Even though you have geotech reports and things, they will tell you things like, I know Konubia was one ideal example. They found rock there, and that contract had gone up by millions of rands before they even started. So there seems to be an abuse as far as escalation. What measures do you believe we should put in place to try and mitigate against it, or try and prevent this? Because I think there's a loophole there for abuse. Now, I've noticed, AG, that you repeatedly raised the question of repeat offenders. I call them from a criminal aspect. I regard them as repeat offenders. And what we found from the criminal justice system, a lot of the crime is committed by repeat offenders, and it seems to be exactly the same thing here. Now, and I know you're saying that consequence management is a problem, or it tends the disciplinary processes are taking too long. Do you believe that we have the will to do that? Or what do you believe should be done to try and accelerate that process? Because, my concern is this, that people get suspended from their positions. But there's no deterrent because they get suspended with full pay. And by the time you find them guilty, their contracts have come to an end, they've been received full pay, you get nothing back out of them. I don't know, and I think I agree with the chair when he says that we're working in silos. Maybe with the criminal justice system needs to be aligned with departments so that when we have challenges of this nature, and like you've given an example of companies that might have unduly benefited, end up liquidating very conveniently. Many of them liquidate, so you don't get anything back from them. Whether something should happen or something should be done so that these people don't just get away with it. But lastly, I want to say, how do we, as the Standing Committee on Appropriation, or what can we do to strengthen your powers or to work more closer with you to be able to identify all these people, but specifics, and I'm talking about specifics. If we go to local government, if there's a CFO there or an accounting officer that has been of year after year, he's been having findings against him or his department, whether there is any process. I know I've asked this before, Chairperson, to give us names, specific names of culprits on the ground, repeat offenders, so that we could deal with them. So maybe this committee can go there and follow it up until they are dealt with. So if you can just, some of those things will help. But thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the Office of the Auditor General for presenting this briefing to the committee. And we indeed appreciate this well-detailed report. And it will enable us to, get into, to make inroads as to what areas to assist, in order to also, give support to the Office of the Auditor General out of the report that we're receiving as a committee. But let me start here as well, Chairperson, that we have been receiving, we once received a briefing from the Office of the Auditor General, and that report was detailing a number of areas which are of concern to that office. I don't know, some of those areas are still reflective as to this juncture. I just want to go back to make reference to one that was referring to, the instability, for instance, in political instability that begin to play itself in the municipalities, etc., or influence. As to what an extent has the office now picked up that attendance or intervention is now beginning to take place, or it's still is the status quo, etc. I'm trying to go back because those were some of the overarching reasons that were raised in one report that was given before this report. So I don't know to what an extent would you comment around that. Is there any improvement that you now see since that report and it's been getting? I think, Chairperson, we need to make a very firm proposal with regard to how people operate or this department operate in future. As we meet with them, I think we have to make a precondition as we receiving or briefing from the department. Maybe one is to demand before a presentation that firstly, the department must tell us about expenditure, especially where we notice under expenditure. We must start there, not to receive a report which says a department, how are we going to intensify to underspend? No, it must start where we ended, to say, last time when we make presentation, there was an issue on underspending, as to what improvement have you made before you make a request in order to deal with these areas that the Auditor General is also referring to, which are related to infrastructure grant, not being utilized properly, schools backlog, etc. I think you should make it standard in the committee that before you present as a department, tell us first about that underspending and how have you improved, not intensified underspending. So if there's any improvement, then we can entertain that department its request for adjustment or whatever that the department is requesting. Otherwise, we're going to do we're going to move in circles around with the department. Two is that I think the issue of performance contract, it's very clear that if this issue of performance contract does not include these areas which the Auditor General is talking about, this problem or this challenge of poor performance with regard to expenditure or under expenditure or these abnormalities that we see in the Auditor General's report, schools backlog, infrastructure grant, under inadequate non-payment of service providers in 30 days, etc. They are not going to move away from before us. So if they are not included, I don't know what does the Office of the Auditor General think around the issue of performance contract being attached to all these critical areas, which in fact they were supposed to be part of the officials who are executing this mandate in terms of PFMA, that they take responsibility, because it is the PFMA that says you spend, you account, you do this and that and that. So it means that automatically must come into your performance of contract. But I don't see any reason or any improvement in the absence of the performance contract. There would be consequent management, enough consequent management happening there, because I can see here, as the report is being presented, people have taken advantage of the absence of certain conditions which are part of the performance contract. So they are scot-free. So if there's any non-expenditure, or if there's for instance, schools backlog, infrastructure, poor infrastructure, it's not improving, or it's worsened, property is being damaged, property is not occupied, houses are not being built, all this, it's scot-free. An official can just relax. The accounting officer there will just relax, no consequence. The auditor will just come one day, visit, and take note of that without consequence. So I won't be surprised if there aren't enough consequent management method against those officials, if these have not been included in their performance contract as officials of the government. So I just want to understand what is the intake of the Office of the Auditor Generals in as far as not being able to include performance contract, including all these areas of critical concern in their performance contract would make any sense. For me, I don't think they will make any sense in as far as, maybe it is also to get an understanding from the Office of the Auditor General, how many of the affected officials and accounting officials who have been subjected to disciplinary measures for failing to enforce Section 38 and 40 of the Public Finance Management Act. I think it's very, very much important to get that from the Office of the Auditor General. Now, I also want to check from the Office of the Auditor General. So on slide 6, there is a notable and impressive drop in the value of fruitless and wasteful expenditure from 132.6 million to 625.9 million. So what factors could have contributed to this improvement in the periods of 2016-17 to 2017-18? So maybe I just wanted to get that through you, Honorable Chair, and then thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Kwankwan.
Chairperson, with your permission, may I contribute with my video switched off, please?
Perfect.
Thank you, sir. Chair, well, Honorable Kaiso and Honorable Sheikh Imam have to a large extent taken the words out of my mouth. Because the issue I wanted to cite that without a clear performance contract that clearly outlines the responsibilities of these accounting officers. Because remember, the way I understand it in the private sector, your performance agreement or performance contract as an accounting officer is then cascaded down to the relevant and the different executives in the department. So each person takes responsibility for an aspect of your performance management or strategic goals of the department that are linked to your performance agreement. I think the biggest challenge that is there in order to ensure consequence management is that I don't think there are any clear performance management contracts that bind people to certain aspects of performance, which would ensure that we get the outcomes that we require, whether it's at the end of the quarter or end of the year. Now, what happens is, because there is that weakness in the system, it's almost like now the Auditor General has the responsibility of performance managing people and flagging issues of consequence management in the event where there's poor performance or failure to comply with certain pieces of legislation. I think it's our failure. I think it's something that we need to address and make sure that we work on it very hard until it's clarified and done properly. But I also think, Chairperson, perhaps the National Treasury in these discussions need to be paired up somewhat to play a complementary role with the Office of the Auditor General. Remember, the Auditor General, they would look at what you have done. They are more backward looking at reports, whether things were done properly. But people who are supposed to be proactive and ensure that these things are done properly would be your Treasury to say, is this procurement, to have the people who have the capacity to be able to do this work, is what they're doing in line with the relevant legislations and so on when it comes to procurement and the management of finances. I think there needs to be a lot of pairing up that needs to take place between the two entities. You are talking about these departments and us in general working in silos. I think we need to find a way in which we can play a more complementary role. I'm happy to hear that the Office of the Auditor General has started using the powers that we gave them in 2018, when we are trying to give them more teeth in order to fight corruption. But indeed, I think Honorable Imam is quite right in saying that it's important that they give us a sense of what has happened. We've been given a sense of what, from an activity point of view, what has been implemented and what has been done. But I think as we implement the legislation, we need to be given an update as to whether more powers are required, whether they need more teeth, whether some processes can be streamlined. I'm making this point mindful of the fact that they still have to treat the accounting officer with fairness in the entire process, meaning it won't be as fast as we would hope it to be. It's going to take its own course. But I think it's important for us to document all the lessons that we learn out of that process to see how it can be improved, how can the process we can make sure that it's faster, that people are held to account quicker, so that we don't find ourselves in a position similar to where Honorable Kais was talking about the disciplinary hearings that take forever, where people are suspended. I think it was Honorable Sheikh Imam. All of those issues, so that when we engage on a regular basis, we know exactly what is expected of us as a committee. I cannot, perhaps as a side issue, I cannot understand for the life of me how a person can book flights, as the presenter made an example. You book flights and people don't pitch up. There's no accountability as to whether or why the flight, for example, was not cancelled or the flight postponed. I mean, in Parliament, I'm making this example. If I book a flight, or say I agree to go on oversight with the Committee of Parliament, and I don't pitch, that gets taken from my salary on the 15th next pay run. They take that money, the amount of money they have lost, because they say they can't incur wasteful expenditure because of an irresponsible MP. So we should also be moving along those lines to make sure that everyone actually feels the pinch for wasting state resources. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Kwankwa, thank you very much. Any other oral member would like to have a second bite? Honorable Sarupian?
No, thanks, Chair. I'm covered.
Honorable Sheikh Imam? Honorable Kaiso?
No, I'm covered, Chair.
Honorable Kwankwa, anything has just come up in the last minute or two?
Aye, diabulela sihlalo.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, honorable members, for your questions. Let me add to the basket of the AG. Let me start by this one. I think in this committee, we have raised the issue of the paucity of project management skills in government in general. And that becomes very clear when you deal with the infrastructure programs. The escalation of costs, even your big SOEs, if you look at what happened at Kusile and Medupi, the escalation there went into billions, more than 150 billion over the budget. So we may as well say there was no budget there. You can't have a 100% escalation of the project. So we've raised this issue before, but I must say, oral members, that I don't think that we have had a response in terms of implementation of this type of training, because all departments, not just those who implement infrastructure programs, which is very important, is even more important to them. All of them should, project management skills are critical for service delivery of any nature. So, oral members, please note this, because I think we need to follow up on this, because most of the problems that one sees, they emanate from the paucity of these skills in government. And we seem not to get the indication that something is done about them. Related to this is a question of contract management skills. You see, I know of certain companies who go in with their lawyers from the first day they negotiate with government. They get top lawyers so that they make sure that they catch you in the type of contract that you sign, right? And they're having all the loopholes. But you, as a person who's paying, you find that your hands are tied. So it's one skill, again, that the contract management skills are also lacking as far as we are concerned. And again, oral members, I think it's an area that we should follow up and get from the departments what are they doing to try and deal with this issue. And we are identifying these project management skills as one of the causal factors for the escalation of costs. But I just wanted to check with it, now it comes to you, AG. What do you think the impact of the PPPFA is on cost escalations? For instance, your 2080 rule and the 1090 rule. basically where people come in with the lowest price, but they factor in all these things. Before you know, before the project ends, you find that the price is the highest of all of them that came in at the beginning. I hope you get my question. Number two, late payment of service providers. What do you think is the main contributory factor? And do you see your auditees paying your small service providers, especially the big companies, any interest for late payment? My hypothesis is that only big companies are paid interest for late payment, but small companies who need that money more than the big companies are always prejudiced when it comes to this. But I would like to hear your comment. Another question, what do you think the impact of high turnover of management in these auditees is? Perhaps related to this is an area which has been raised by Honorable Sheikh Imam, the question of suspending of officials when it takes too long. You know, you've got officials who have been suspended for 5 years. Right? They say there's a culture in government and the public sector in general, which says that suspend and investigate, where people are suspended without cases, and then people start the question of investigating thereafter, and that impact on the length of the time that people are suspended. Also, there's a question of a new sheriff in town. He or she comes, and then she starts paging people who are in the organization who have been there. And the easiest way of paging them is to put them on suspension and have everybody acting. And those people would know that they've been appointed by Buthelezi, therefore they owe their allegiance to Buthelezi. So how prevalent is this thing where people are being paged, suspended because of nothing else but just of paging them, so that people get pliable people in their position? I've heard in a number of places where you have basically trumped up charges, no substance whatsoever, hence such a long time in terms of people being paid staying at home. And perhaps what would you recommend for people who have, for instance, an accounting officer who put people into suspension for long times, and after that they come back and they are not found guilty? What do you think we should do to try and discourage that that practice? Because it's not just about wasteful and fruitless expenditure, but it also denies the organization of the skills that it has developed over the years. But I would like to hear what the AG's comment is on that. Elephant in the room at National Treasury, IFMS. It is concerning that National Treasury comes up very high in the list of departments with wasteful and fruitless expenditures, because we're expecting them to be playing an oversight role there. So your comment on that, but I think AG, I've heard this IFMS thing for many years, but it seems it's not coming to an end. Can we, from your perspective, hear what exactly is happening with IFMS? If not now, can we have a full report on what is happening in IFMS, the monies that we have spent in IFMS, and where is this project as things stand now, and whether anyone has been held accountable for IFMS at National Treasury? Those will be my inputs, and back to you, AG. You'll decide with your team who answers questions, you'll only bring back the meeting to me once you have attended to all the things that have been raised. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Buthelezi. I do note that some of the questions overlap with one another, so I'll try and combine my responses in those cases where they talk to one another. Thank you so much. So I'll start with Honorable Sarupen's questions on the capacity. Is the capacity improving, or is it getting worse? I think that was the question. And it also talked to in the area of properties and facilities management, are we seeing improvement? Honorable, if I may say, what is encouraging from the work that we did in the last PFMA cycle was to note the actions that were taken by the minister to address the recommendations that we had raised in this environment, especially in the areas of facilities and leases where there was a leakages, where we were paying for leases that were not occupied, and in instances where actually leases were escalating at levels that were significantly higher than inflation. We saw action that was encouraging by the minister in curbing and in implementing the recommendations that we had raised in this area. And then there was a question on the recommendations to say, are they being followed through, especially on these new powers? Are the recommendations being implemented? So it's a mixed bag. I must say it's a mixed bag. There are cases that are encouraging where we are seeing MIs being resolved.
Miss Ngoma.
Okay. Oh, I'm not a robot. Can you send me check?
Very, very clear. Yes, thank you. The people of yeah, we can see you. We can see you.
All right.
Yeah, the people of South Africa want to see the people are auditing their books. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair, for reminding me on the plan. So this one is a mixed bag, Chairperson. As I said, the powers are still new. They are just over 3 years old in terms of implementation. They were effective from April 2019. So we are beginning to see accounting officers implementing the actions that we would have raised in the notifications and also in the recommendations. But having said that, there are pockets of areas where we are seeing delays. I think there's a slide there where I talk about the delays from the audit side, where one, accounting officers are not stable in their roles. They change and the new accounting officers are appointed, and that tends to delay the process of implementing these powers, because we then have to issue a notification again to the new accounting officer, depending in any event at what stage that MI process was at. So we are picking up those. Also on the investigations, we are seeing quite a lot of delays. The investigations by their nature, Chairperson, because there's various stages. There would be the issuing of charges stage, there would be the summoning stage, the investigation stage, the disciplinary stage. So we are noticing that with all these stages, the progress is not as fast and as quick as we would want it to be. But having said that, because this is a legal process, we do then afford these accounting officers to implement these actions in line with all the steps that are required, so that this doesn't backfire for us in the end. So there are those pockets of delays that we do notice in the system, Chairperson. And then coming to Honorable, I think it was Honorable Ahmed was driving. So, okay, there was a question on the consequence management on the repeat offenders in particular.
Sorry, Ms. Ngoma. Yeah, the many of us have asked question is Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Shake, okay. I think I missed that question because he was driving. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was saying, is there a will? Is there a will? I think these questions, they talk to one another in terms of the responses that I have provided. And he also posed an important question to say, are we working in silos? So he was basically referring to this committee to say, what is it that you can do to also perhaps harmonize and collaborate with these public bodies, your SIUs, your HOCs? That would be my recommendation, Chairperson, where you can invite them to be part and parcel of your briefing, to give you feedback on the cases that we would have referred to them, to sort of, not to use the word demand, but demand accountability on where they are and what the delays are in implementing or in fast-tracking the cases that have been referred. I do think that, because you mentioned a big word, the silos, working in silos, if you were to collaborate and invite them to give you status, and then maybe get lessons on where you can come in as this committee to unlock the bottlenecks. Maybe the starting point is to understand what are the bottlenecks and where can you unlock the bottlenecks. I think the question of strengthening, not strengthening our powers per se, but strengthening the work that we do, that tactic, Chairperson, can go a long way, where you invite these public bodies to give you feedback on the progress of these cases. Then there was a question, again, it speaks to consequence management. I think I want to address this one in totality. It was saying, are there instances where the state has not done enough to enforce consequence management? Which departments seem to show the highest rate of improvement? So we had noted, Chairperson, in our previous general report, at least 43 auditees that registered an improvement in the discipline to comply with the legislative requirements. And from these departments, if I were to just highlight, there were two national departments consisting of the Civilian Secretariat for Police and the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, the IPID. So we did note the improvement around these two, and some of the good practices that we have noted that allow improvements are stability in officials with necessary skills. I think this question, if you were to theme them, is the question of consequence management, is the stability in officials. In cases where consequences are implemented, we do note that it is usually associated with the stability in officials with necessary skills. And in those cases, the action plans would be monitored by management. They would track not only our findings, but they would track internal audit findings together with the oversight that would be provided by the audit committees. So I think I've dealt now with the question of consequence management. Coming to the question of Honorable Kaiso, I don't know if I've said it well, Honorable Kaiso.
Yes, you're correct.
All right, all right. Then there was a question on the underspending by auditees, and whether this committee can call them to account. We welcome that, Chairperson. I think if you look at that accountability eco-model, that is where we can begin to strengthen one another. When we raise these issues and then you invite them to account on underspending. There's underspending and then there's no delivery of services. So we would really welcome that recommendation. And then there was a question of instability. I want to address it. I've got a graph here that I want to just refer to very quickly. Instability in people in critical roles. And I think you also, Honorable, talked to that question, Honorable Mutele, as you asked the very same question. there are concerns that we are picking up around vacancies in key positions. Maybe this is an area as well that this committee can take note of and can call the accounting officers to account on these vacancies on key positions. So in the year 2021, though there's been improvement, okay, let's start from 2018-19, the vacancies on key officials were at 39%. And then in 1920, those vacancies were at 37%. Then in 2021, they were at 33%. We will be able to provide an update, Chairperson, after we have finalized this cycle of the PFMA on where we are on these vacancies. But to have vacancies of this level, 1/3 of critical positions are vacant, Chairperson, speaks to all these issues that we have been talking about, because we do know that capability enables accountability. So once there are vacancies and then you have people acting, then that is where the accountability gets to be distorted. And then Honorable Ngwangwa and also Honorable Kaiso spoke about the same issue of performance contract, which I think Honorable Ngwangwa responded to that issue I think the question was to say, is there a need to ensure that there are performance contracts in place for these officials in critical positions in particular? And then Honorable Ngwangwa responded to that question to say, over and above that, so there is a need, because there's a saying that what does not get measured doesn't get done. I think there's a standard saying, because these deliverables, these measurements and indicators, performance indicators, are not in the performance contracts. They've got nothing that you can hold them to account against. What do you hold them to account against? What is it that they need to deliver at the end of their period if we don't formalize these performance contracts? And then there is another subject that I wanted to link this question with, the subject of APPs, the annual performance plans of these departments. It's an area that the office is beginning to put a spotlight on, Honorable Buthelezi, where we are now auditing and testing whether there is actually congruence, correspondence, alignment between the mandate of the department and the annual performance plans, the targets that they will implement against. In many of the cases, we have noted in the past that the APPs do not talk to the mandate of that department, and then the service delivery will suffer at the end of the day. So this is an area that we want to invite this committee, where possible and practical, to really also play an oversight, a rigorous oversight around. And when you play that oversight, because you are also on the budget allocation side, you hold a very powerful role, is to ensure that these targets, they speak to their mandates, number one, and what will be delivered, what will be the impact of these targets that are located in the APP. Will they address the service delivery issues that are on the ground? And if you can be involved at the approval stage of these APPs, I do believe our accountability eco model and the outcomes, therefore, will be strengthened, Honorable Chair. And then Honorable Ngwangwa asked a question to say, on the powers themselves, on the MIs, what is it that has been implemented? So I want to invite myself to submit to you, Chairperson, to have a follow-up report where we submit exactly with the details, because I had said in the presentation, 5 have been resolved. Maybe let's share those examples and let's share those practices, because Honorable Ngwangwa also talked about the need to document all the lessons. So let's share those 5 that have been resolved. What are they? Which OTTs? What is it? When you say resolved, what do we mean? And then those also that are still outstanding, so that you can assist with the oversight around those ones. And then coming to your set, Honorable Buthelezi, a long list of questions from your side. I think you're spot on there where you elevated. I heard you clearly elevating the issue of paucity of project management skills in the country. And it's truly appreciated that this area is being elevated here. And I heard you talk about the interventions, various interventions that you had recommended, like your training to capacitate and to scale this environment. Maybe we need to then elevate it a bit further now to establish, to get feedback, call them back to account, invite them, these departments to account on whether the training is taking place and whether you're seeing impact of this training on the ground. You also spoke to the contract management skills. It's an area that speaks to that supply chain environment where the implementation of controls in this area really is dismal, as you can pick up from the fruitless and wasteful expenditure slide and also from the MI slide. It's an area that as you call them to account, they need to account on whether how are they closing these gaps that were identified that speak to procurement management skills and contract management skills. So I'm adding to your list the chairperson. And then on the turnover, honorable, of management in audit, it's an area that if you look at the call to actions that we have been raising over the years in our general reports, it's one of the recommendations that we will elevate, that one, we need to hire capable and skilled officials. Capability enables accountability. So you must hire capable officials, ethical. Not someone can be capable and not ethical. So capable and ethical officials. Then once you hire the right skill, the right competency, you allow them a tenure so that they can be able to implement. In those cases where we saw outcomes improve, the internal control environment improve, we were able to associate those auditees with stability of management, stability in key roles, capability, ethical officials, and then stability. That is a recipe for success, Honorable. We will then submit to you, a chairperson, the report on the IFMS. I think we owe it to this committee to do a detailed report of what we are picking up on the what we've picked up in this current cycle on the IFMS. But it's an old story where in the main we reported that the National Treasury is paying for this IFMS, but it's not utilized on the ground. So there's no correspondence between the payment and the utilization of the system. And we are still picking up the lack thereof of utilization of that system, Chairperson. Let me pause, Chairperson. In some cases, I sort of grouped the responses because they were, if you were to theme them, consequence management is at the top. How can you strengthen us to ensure we fast track implementation? That's when I said maybe the public bodies, you can invite them to also account. And then there was an area of performance contract. I added the area of APPs. And then we welcome the suggestion of thorough performance management by this committee. And then the area of skills, if you can elevate that area, Chairperson, as you call them to account, as you engage with them, where you've identified the positive of project management. This country has got great policies, great frameworks, but we're not good at implementing, Chairperson. Our problem is in the implementation. If you can, as you implement your role, as you strengthen also in line with that accountability commodity, if this can be the area that you pay attention on, we all can go a long way in ensuring that the citizens on the ground get the promises that are located in the Constitution. Thank you, Honorable. Back to you.
Thank you, Honorable Ngoma. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Ngoma. Just to remind you, I still want to hear a comment on cost escalation. And I I used an example of ESCOM. I also used this thing of the PFA, the 80-20 rule and the 90-10 rule, where the lowest price basically gets the contract. But once they are in, they've got all types of maneuvering that they do in escalating the costs and so on and so forth. So my point is that the current PFA as it stands has got a lot of loopholes as far as cost. I just wanted to hear what your comment is. That's number one. And number two, again, where I would like to hear your comment is, can you please just confirm that underspending does not result in audit finding? And what do you think the impact of this is on service delivery? Please comment on those things before I come in.
Let me start with the easy one.
Perhaps just hold there. Let me, honorable members, anything that you would like to make a follow up on? Honorable Sarupen.
No, thank you, Chair. I think everything was the AG side.
Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Kaiso.
No, Chair. I think I'm largely covered by the explanation given above on those issues that we wanted to get clarity on.
Thank you.
Other than the one that we have just actually referred to, the Honorable Chair, around the issue of, to an extent, the Office of the Auditor-General thinks has this problems or challenges are impacted upon, service delivery. And I want to make a particular reference to those collapsed municipalities, Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Pankwa, anything coming to your mind? Honorable Pankwa? Okay. Madam Goma, please come in.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. Let me start with the easy one. I think that one is easy. The underspending. No, we will not raise a finding on that. However, we are picking up a congruence, correspondence between the underspending and the service delivery on the ground. So I think you are spot on there. Your observation is spot on. And I think it's an area you can really zoom into, put a spotlight into as this committee, as you drive your oversight, rigorous oversight. And then on the triple PFA, let me respond to this one, Chair, in the way that I've seen it in the environment. We do notice areas of cost escalations. I think it's one of the things we've highlighted in the infrastructure grants findings. We do notice this, actually, not just negligible, like significant cost escalation. And when we drill deeper into this cost escalations, it talks again to the area. I think there's a linkage. Your message of positive of project management skills is directly linked to this one, where there's poor planning, where there's no consequence management, where contractors are not adhering to their milestones. But we have noted this area of a cost escalation. Maybe I can revert back to you on the question of where they appoint someone with a lower cost. I think that was your question. They appoint someone with a lower cost, so they win the bid because the cost is low, and then you start to see this. So that relationship, maybe let me just come back on that relationship. But you are spot on the cases of cost escalations, one of the areas that we have identified and it talks to actually quite a lot of things where they appoint service providers that may not have the skill. So it's quite a lot of things. It's a very end-to-end value chain that we must look at. There could be a project management issue from the department side. There's also a hiring, a bid appointment issue where they may hire a service provider that do not have the skill to perform the work, but the cost was attractive when they appointed. So I think you are onto something there. I think I addressed now, Chenny? Okay.
Yes, you did, Ms. Ngoma. But thank you very much. I'm sure you'll agree with us that we really needed to get into this type of engagement. I think, let me just reiterate these areas. You promised to provide us with a report on the vacancies in key positions, right? Once you have finalized your audit, and again, not with just the vacancies, but the impact of these vacancies in service delivery of the said auditee. You also promised us to provide us with your MIs, interventions, and details thereof. We'll definitely wait for that. The cost escalation story, again, there's a report that you want to give us. May I request Darren, Noliolo, and Musa, can you please make sure there are a number of other areas that we need to follow up on? Can you just make sure that for the benefit of the committee, you lift up those things so that we may ensure that we make a proper follow up on them? You would have heard the AG saying, please call the said department so that they can be able to give further information and more detail on some of the issues that we are raising. AG, I think our span is more or less like yours as the Appropriations Committee, because we literally deal with all the departments. We always say that our mandate, which I think more or less is like yours, is that everybody and anybody who receives money from us is our client from Parliament. It's our client, and those are the auditees that you also deal with. So there's definitely congruence between our mandates as far as your clients are concerned. I think what obvious you gave us the departments, right? We think there are many other, in fact, even bigger challenges when it comes to the SOEs. I think our next engagement would like you to focus on the SOEs and the agencies, and so that you can see how do these problems manifest themselves when it comes to them. So I definitely, when we get another opportunity, I will definitely be requesting you to come back with that, because you may as well start working on them, because we'll definitely be inviting you. You know that our SOEs and our agencies are a big delivery channel for government, especially as it relates to infrastructure. And you know that as government, we have identified infrastructure as a key driver in the economic recovery and reconstruction program that the president announced. So we can't leave them out. We'd like to hear from your perspective what the challenges are when it comes to them. With those words, again, we thank you for the time and your team that you have spent with us, and the elucidation that you have given to the committee on a number of issues that you raised and we raised. Thank you very much. That takes us to the end of your agenda item. As a transparent committee, you may decide to remain in the meeting, but we know that you still have got a lot of work to do, so you are excused if you so decide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Darren, let's jump to our next agenda item.
Chairperson, yes, announcements. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday with National Treasury. They will brief the committee on the first quarter expenditure report for the 2022-23 financial year.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. Let's meet National Treasury on Tuesday next week. Honourable members, let me take this opportunity to thank all of you for availing yourself on a Friday. We usually don't meet on a Friday. You've got other responsibilities, but you took time and engaged with a very important institution, the AG. Much appreciated. This brings us to the end of today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't forget my call, Chairperson. Thank you.